My name is Frank Hodek, and today, December 9th, 2014, I am pleased to have the opportunity to speak not only with a respected law librarian, but also a good friend. Dwight B King, Jr. is Head of Research Services at the Kresge Law Library of Notre Dame Law School, a position he has held since 1990. Our conversation is part of the Oral History of Law Librarianship Project, a component of the Spinelli Law Library Reference Shelf on Hein Online. Dwight, it's a pleasure for me to chat with you today here at Notre Dame about your life and career as a law librarian. Let's begin by learning a little about you personally. Can you tell us about your early life, where you were raised, your family background, and what your childhood was like?
Okay, so I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. That's about an hour and a half away from here. And I'm the oldest of three children. My father was a fireman, and my mother was a nurse in Kalamazoo. And I had a very good childhood, a lot of sandlot baseball, football, stuff like that.
That's great.
Yes. I'm again the oldest of three children. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. And recently my wife and I were talking about whether or not we should, not recently, but a while ago, talking about whether or not we should attend all of our kids' soccer games. And I remember my father used to come to every football practice that I had when I was in high school. So it was a good childhood. My parents were good parents.
Excellent. What do you like to do in your spare time? What are some of your interests, passions, pursuits outside of law librarianship?
I have several. For a long time, I was a judo player, and I used to be an assistant judo coach at the local Y here for many years.
Fantastic.
But a back injury and a hip replacement stopped that. I also, though, I enjoy bicycling, and I enjoy fixing up old bicycles. So I have a lot of those, yeah. And a nice thing about being here at Notre Dame is they sort of allow me to have a flex schedule. And on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I work at a soup kitchen in town, and I enjoy that. I'm the one who makes the garlic bread at the soup kitchen, so I've enjoyed that.
Good for you.
And then also, when my sons were playing soccer, I began announcing soccer games, and I've continued to do that, high school soccer games. And I've done that for the high school for about 10 years, then also for a while when we had a semi-pro team in town, I did that as well.
Well, I'm very impressed. Are you the guy that screams really loud when they score a goal?
No, actually, someone else sort of has that as their trait, so I'm a little quieter about it. But yeah,
okay.
Then another thing too is I do sort of folk art wood sculpture, and I was proud a couple of years ago I had a museum show here in South Bend and one in Michigan.
Fantastic.
So, yeah. So.
Wow. And are these? Do you sell this artwork, or?
It takes so much time, and I've done them mostly for my family. So my house is full of them. I haven't sold them. You really can't get enough money for all the work that goes into it.
Yes, but it's a passion. It's a kind of thing.
Yeah. So they're all about sort of personal things in my life. So
that's fabulous. I should have asked you about your children. How many do you have?
Oh, I have 4 children. My oldest daughter is a dancer in New York, and then I have 2 sons who are paralegals, one in Chicago, one in D.C. The one in D.C. is actually applying to law school. He's going to start next year. And then my youngest daughter is a freshman at Indiana University, Bloomington.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to your educational and professional training. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that and your early career aspirations.
Oh, yeah. So I received my education at the University of Michigan. I took full advantage of in-state tuition. I got my
Good old days.
That's right. My BA, my JD, and my MLS at the University of Michigan.
Excellent.
And I was a history major in college, and then went on to law school. I remember some graffiti on the bathroom wall that said, I went to law school because I couldn't think of what better to do, what a price to pay for a lack of imagination, and that kind of summarized it for me. And so I went to law school. I was actually going to drop out after a couple of years. I really didn't like it very much. I'd gotten hired for a job as a cabinet maker, and I'd never done it before, but I was going to be an apprentice. But I was done with 2 years of law school, and you know, everyone's so proud that you're in law school and everything. I didn't want to disappoint my parents, that kind of thing, so I said I would stick it out. So I did do that. But when I was in law school, there was a friend of mine, her mother went to the library school at University of Michigan. And I worked in libraries in high school and in college, and she said, we should think about law librarianship as a possibility, you know, and you've always worked in libraries. And so I thought about that, and I decided that that's what I would do, and that's what I pursued.
So you moved, you got all 3 degrees at Michigan, and you did them one right after the other.
That's right.
And so after law, at some point in the law school, you thought, well, you know, I'm going to give librarianship a try.
Right, that's when I found out about law librarianship, and so that's what I would do.
Excellent.
So that sort of carried me through the 3rd year of law school.
So, so when you entered library school, you were already thinking about law librarianship as a career?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, soon after completing that MLS, in 1981, you began your first professional library position at the University of Baltimore as a public services librarian.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that first job? How did you get from Michigan to Baltimore, and
sure.
what were some of the things that you did there?
Sure. I met my wife, we met in high school.
Mm-hmm.
We've been together like 42 years.
Congratulations.
And married for 37. But we got married right after undergraduate.
Mm-hmm.
And she took a year off while I went to law school, so I was 1 year ahead of her. Then the next year, she decided to go to law school, so I was 1 year ahead of her in law school. And I did my library degree while she finished law school by going in the summers. It was a 1.5-year program. I went the summers and a full year.
Mm-hmm.
So then we decided we'd go wherever someone got a job. And she got a job as an internship at the Washington Post in D.C., so that's how we got to D.C. And then so I was looking for a job, and that's how I found out about a job in Baltimore. So I would commute to Baltimore each day by Amtrak.
Excellent. So she worked at the Post?
Yes.
In exciting times, I would think.
That's right, yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah. Great. So tell me a little bit about what you did at Baltimore. Did it meet your expectations?
It was a great place to start out because I didn't have very much practical experience. And it was a very small library, and I was the first professional reference librarian there. They'd only had students before. And I had great bosses there. Emily Greenberg was the director, and Ann Van Hassel was my immediate supervisor. They were both great people to work for in a first job.
I imagine so.
Yeah,
especially Emily, I knew her well.
Yes, yes, very nice.
Yes.
And so I was the reference librarian there, and then I also did interlibrary loan. But I mean, it was such a small place, did a lot of things.
That sometimes it's a great learning opportunity.
That's right.
Isn't it?
That's right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So you were the public services librarian there, and then you became associate law librarian at Baltimore in January 1985, a position you held for a year. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that new position involved more administrative responsibilities.
Yes, that's right. What
did you like and or dislike about library administration as opposed to, say, straight reference and ILL work?
Yes. Well, I took that position because Ann Van Hassel moved away. And I enjoyed it. I mean, it's always sort of fun being in charge a little bit, you know. But there were also, we had some sort of messy personnel issues going on at the time. Romantic relationships that were sort of interfering with the work situation, things like that. There were some thefts going on we thought was by staff members. So that wasn't a fun part of being an administrator.
No.
Yes, yes. But also, through Emily, at that time Roger Jacobs was the law librarian at the Supreme Court. And Emily and he were friends. And then also I was involved in the Law Library Association of Maryland. And so I got to know Roger, and he knew that I was from this area when he left him to come to Notre Dame.
Right.
And so he told me if I was ever interested in coming back this way to be closer to home, to let him know. And so when the job opened up at Notre Dame, that's when I applied for that. So it wasn't so much that I was disappointed or disliked administration. I mean, there was good and bad, but it was a chance for us to get back home. And our oldest daughter was born at that time, and we really kind of felt a little isolated out there in D.C. and wanted our kids to grow up with their cousins and so on.
Sure.
So it was a chance to come near home.
That makes a lot of sense.
And Notre Dame is the closest law library to Kalamazoo.
How far, just showing my geographic.
Oh, yeah, so about an hour and a half.
Oh,
hour and a
so
half.
that's
Yes.
probably about the right distance.
Yes. Get there when you want to.
That's right.
When you don't want to.
People aren't going to necessarily show up on your doorstep.
That's right. That's right.
So in 1986, pardon me, you came here to the Kresge Law Library as a research librarian, and 4 years later, in 1990, you were promoted to head of research services, a position you still hold today.
Yes.
So obviously something agrees with you about Notre Dame. Can you give us some insight into what has kept you here for 30 years?
Sure. Well, when I was growing up, I went to public school for about through the 4th grade, and then my parents converted to Catholicism, and then I went to Catholic school there at Hackett High School in Kalamazoo. And when I played football there, our helmets had a little Fighting Irish guy, you know, probably some trademark infringement thing going on, but we had it anyway. So Notre Dame was always like an ideal place in our minds.
Sure.
And so I've been happy here as a Catholic. It's nice here at the Catholic University. And also, again, the thing close to our families, which is really important to my wife and I. And also, just it's great people to work with here. I enjoyed my time here with Roger Jacobs, Janice Johnston, Mike Slinger, and now Ed Edmonds. So I've always had real good people to work with and work for.
Great. And
then also here, I've been involved in a lot of other things too. Like, I've been in the admissions committee for several years and enjoyed that. I'm the ombudsperson for discriminatory harassment for the entire university. I've enjoyed my time here, and so I want other people to enjoy their work life here, and so I've enjoyed that position as an ombudsperson.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about both of those positions that you just mentioned? I think it's probably a little bit unusual for a professional librarian to serve on a law school's admissions committee. What has that experience been like for you?
I've done it for a long time, probably about 20 years.
Wow.
And I mean, that was very encouraging, that they respect my opinion about things. And like I say, after my law school experience, it was sort of interesting that I would be a person, deciding who should come to law school. but I enjoyed it. It's very humbling seeing all the accomplishments that these young people have in their lives. But I sort of think about my experience when I read those personal statements, think, would you be happy here, whatever, and I think I enjoyed that.
Very good. And the ombudsman person for the entire university, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I'm one of the faculty members, Carol Mooney, who's now the president of St. Mary's College, nominated me for that position. And I think she just thought that I was a person who was easy to talk to, and a good sympathetic ear for people who were sort of dissatisfied with their work situation. And so I don't really carry out the investigations or anything myself, but when people come to talk to me about the situation, I encourage them to go to what's called the Office of Institutional Equity on campus. It sort of follows through more with the investigation of the situation.
So they sort of tend to start with you, and just you're a person that they can they can have a private conversation and get some feedback and perhaps some ideas about how to further deal with the situation.
That's right. Sort of a person who's not intimidating when they might be intimidated to go to higher ups or whatever about the situation.
Good point. Well, that must be a pretty rewarding and satisfying.
It is. When people come back and say, you really helped me or whatever, that's nice. That's good. It's disappointing when you can't help people, and it's very disconcerting about the situations that some people encounter here.
I understand. So you have been, by my count, I hope this number is not a scary number, but by my count, you've been an academic law librarian for close to 35 years, approaching that number.
Yes.
how much, and much of that time has been spent providing reference services and teaching legal research, especially online resources. So kind of a broader question, how, from your perspective, has the profession changed and perhaps the world of legal information changed over the course of that time?
I know that you interviewed my colleague Warren Reese, and a couple of years ago we canceled all of our reporters, print reporters, and Warren sent a message around saying, you know, I never thought I'd live to see the day. And that's kind of the way I felt. Like, these were so important for so long, yeah. But they're no longer here. It's definitely changed with online resources. You know, people sometimes worry that they don't need librarians anymore. I think we still got. I think they're going to need us for quite a while longer, because everything you can't find through a Google search. A lot of these things are available on electronic subscription databases, but the students don't know which ones to go to. Sure. So there's still a place for us. But it's been a big change. It's been a big change. And oftentimes when I'm teaching legal research, like this year, for instance, you know, you want to talk about a 4-step method of updating the print digest, which you had mastered for so long. You wanted to pass on that information, and now nobody cares. They don't need to know this. Westlaw and Lexis are updated.
I have been there, done that. I remember, I hesitate to put myself into your interview, but I can't help but to recall how proud I was as my very first job at the Los Angeles County Law Library that I knew how to update the ALRs. Mm-hmm. And so people would come in and they didn't know, and I could take them through that little process.
Yes.
A different kind of system depending on which series you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And right, and now that's like
so
who cares? Absolutely. Well, in terms of service, you made a point that I think is worth exploring just a little further about the fact that yes, there are information is theoretically more accessible, and yet the need for services from librarians to assist people in getting to the information that is available, but they may not be aware of how it's available.
Right.
Really hasn't lessened. In fact, in some respects, I almost think it's increased.
Yes, I agree.
You mentioned a couple of people. You talked about Roger Jacobs, and you just mentioned Warren Reese. I wonder if you would like to talk a little bit about some of the individuals that you've met and worked with during your career. In particular, I wonder if there's someone who you might consider to be a mentor, or others who you in the profession whom you especially admire.
Many people. With my first job, Emily Greenberg definitely, and Van Hassel was very influential to me. I remember something I always tell my class each year when I teach is she always told me, let them know that the librarian is your friend, and let them call you by your first name. That's something all of us do in the research department here at Notre Dame. Roger Jacobs definitely an inspiration, as well as Ed. I often what I like about them is the way they sort of taught me how you should, respect your staff, treat them with kindness. There are people in the profession, who sort of had a reputation as being rather mean, great mentors, but sort of stern mentors. I enjoyed my time with Roger. He's a good man, and I like him as a mentor. He taught me how to treat people well when you're supervising them and so on. A lot of other people, minority librarians in the profession who've influenced me, Marvin Anderson, Judy Dime-Smith, Carol Nicholson, Rhea Ballard, who I've done a couple of things with, Alan Moy, and so on. So several people there that I met, sort of in the Black Caucus too.
Yes. Very good. Yes. I can't help but say that I spoke with Roger Jacobs yesterday, and he was equally generous in his comments about you.
Oh, that's
absolutely.
Yeah, really.
So you moved on and talked a little bit about individuals in the Black Caucus. I do want to ask you about your work both in your scholarship and your service. One of the focuses has been on diversity, not the sole focus, but one has been diversity. And you did chair the Black Caucus of AALL and the ALL's Committee on Minorities. You talked about serving as a Notre Dame's ombudsperson for discriminatory harassment. You've served on the University Libraries Committee on Diversity here at Notre Dame. And you co-authored several Law Library Journal articles which profiled minority law librarians. So with all of that, I wonder what your view is on diversity in the law library profession. Are things better, worse, about the same since you over the time that you've been a law librarian?
Well, I definitely think that things are better. I mean, recently Ron Wheeler was elected vice president-elect of the association. Carol Nicholson, also another black woman, is president of the association. And when I wrote the first article profiling minority librarians, which I thank you for doing the editing so much on that, because there were some dense statistics that you helped.
It was a challenge, but it was well worth the effort.
Yes, no. But my co-authors there, 2 have left librarianship, and 2 also became library directors. So many more people moved into administration, higher positions within the association, which I think is good. And the numbers have definitely increased. That's just obvious when you go to the annual convention whenever and you notice that. And I'm happy about that because I've often been involved in recruiting people to librarianship or to law librarianship. I've served on the recruitment committee for AA, ALL, also on the leadership development committee. A big part of ours was mentoring to sort of help people along in the profession as well. And here at Notre Dame, we have a couple programs, the Librarian in Residence program, where librarians, mostly from underrepresented groups, are given a chance to work in the academic library, hoping they'll pursue that angle of librarianship. And then also, for a while, we had a high school program where we tried to introduce about 50, I think it was 50 total, high school students to librarianship. And not that many have, I know, gone on to library school, but it did help several of them in college, just being more familiar with the library. Some of them got part-time jobs in librarianship and so on. So, but it was a nice, felt good exposing them.
Absolutely. Well, you have to cast a large net, don't you?
That's right. That's right.
You're never going to get everybody, but if you don't cast that net large, you.
That's right. You have to try.
Absolutely.
And back to my mom and dad. My mom was sort of the first black nurse from Kalamazoo. My father was the first black fireman in Kalamazoo. So I sort of just kind of feel like, you feel an obligation to sort of do your part.
Yeah, those are some great role models, people to emulate.
Yes. And my great-grandmother, at a time when, because of segregation, some of the black students weren't able to stay on campus there in Kalamazoo at one of the colleges. She used to host them a lot, a lot of them lived at her house and so on. So I kind of wanted to do that same thing, and so that's sort of my inspiration, sort of to help here with the Black Law Student Association.
Well, good for you. And that's been recognized. In 1996, the Notre Dame Black Law Students Association created a service award in your name, and 3 years later, the association presented you with its Crutchfield Professorial Excellence Award.
Yes.
That must be particularly satisfying to, as you say, to have those goals in mind and then to have them be recognized by those students.
That's definitely true. And I remember when they named the award in my honor, I just thought that I was going to get an award. I didn't know they were going to name an award in my honor, so that was really, really, really thankful for that.
Well, congratulations.
And when relatives come, I always going to point out that plaque downstairs.
That's well you should. That's well you should. It's not an accident that your name is on that plaque, I know. And I don't want to forget, I mean, in addition to those awards, you were also the 1997 recipient of Notre Dame's FOIC Award for Significant Library Service. and the 2011 recipient of the McLean Award for exceptional contributions to the Notre Dame Law School community life.
Yes,
So it's broader than just the library. Again, just asking you to reflect on what that kind of recognition from students and colleagues.
Yes, that meant a lot just because of all those groups recognizing you. For the FOIC award, that was very nice award to win. You know, here at Notre Dame, the library faculty, the law library faculty is sort of separate from the regular library faculty. And so I enjoyed that award. I know that there were some people in the larger library who were sort of thought I didn't deserve it, which was kind of disturbing. But I think that just comes from the separation of our two groups. But I was glad to get that award, and the McLean Award in particular just because it's from the entire law school community, the third-year students.
That's very special.
So a guy who didn't enjoy law school so much to get an award like that is a good feeling.
That's a very good point. Thank you. I don't want to skip over your professional, your experience in activities with professional organizations. You've been on several AA, LL committees, including important committees, including the nominations committee. You've been on the in various special interest sections and chapters. Kind of asking you, or wondering how, more broadly, how those experiences, what they've meant to you both personally and professionally.
Well, you know, when I was in the nominations committee, I was the one who contacted you to ask if you were interested in becoming the vice president, president-elect. So I always remember that day.
I remember that day too, because it was just you were trying to talk to me just before I was about to do a program, which I was a little nervous about. So I kept saying, no, you need to talk to me later.
Yes. No, but, thank you for your contributions.
Well, I always appreciate it. I remember that very distinctly.
Yeah. So it's been fun working on the committees. For one thing, you get to meet a lot of people who have been friends afterwards. It also gives you a great feeling of accomplishment when you fulfill your committee goals, whatever, for the year, and you think that you actually, accomplished something. So that's a good feeling as well. And it's a good way to build your confidence to do other things when you're successful in endeavors in the committee. When you put together a program that's successful at the association for the convention, you feel good like you can do that back at your home institution as well. I've enjoyed that.
That's very good. Good comment. Dwight, before we end our conversation, I want to make sure that you've had the opportunity to touch on any topics that are important to you, which we might have missed. Is there anything you'd like to add before we conclude?
Well, one thing I would just say, sort of as a recruitment vein, I have a lot of respect for those who go on to be library directors and so on, but I think I sort of represent the people, the middle managers, the frontline reference librarians, who would say that you can also get fulfillment in the profession through those positions as well.
Very good. Very well said. And have someone, speaking from the perspective of someone who did both, who was in the trenches and then went on as director, and faced some of those personnel issues that you alluded to before. Sometimes being director is not all fun and games, for sure. Well, in any case, Dwight, on behalf of Pat Keogh and Michelle Wu, my colleagues with the Oral History of Law Librarianship Project, I want to thank you for taking time to speak with us today about your experiences as a law librarian. Your remarks will be a valuable addition to the project and of interest to both current colleagues and those who will join the profession in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. As a history major, I appreciate this Oral History for the Association. It's a great thing that you're doing.